Okay, what I want to do here is open up just a blank template, and we're going to start walking through all the drawing and modifying tools. Realize if you leave your cursor over this stuff, it's going to pop up with explanations of what it is and how it works. And theoretically, you should go through each one of these tools, recognize that they're there so that when it comes up that you need to use something like this, you know what it is. Okay, lines. Let's start with lines. You can enter Cartesian coordinates for these things like 0, 0. And here's the second point in the line. And you'll see you can keep adding segments and keep adding segments. If you're trying to make some kind of a closed shape, you'll see in the square brackets here, you can hit C and that will close your shape for you. Okay, as well as regular lines, there's this thing called an X line. And an X line, these are great for construction lines if you're trying to line up like a bunch of windows or features, and you just want to put something there to kind of get everything lined up so it goes all the way from the left to the right. Array just goes from one point. So instead of going left to right, it goes from one point and then it just shoots out array of a line. Those are convenient to have. P line. Now this one can combine straight line segments with arcs. You can see what's in the square brackets here. If I click on arc, now all of a sudden I have attached to my original line all of these different arcs, and there's all kinds of different ways to draw arcs, of course. I can go back to drawing a straight line if I want to, and at the very end, when I stop this, the entire thing is connected. So each of those segments is connected to each other with a P line. Let's see, what else should we explore here? Let's look at the arcs. There's a whole bunch of different ways to draw arcs, very confusing. Spend some time in the ribbon just hovering over these things and studying the directions. So 1, 2, 3, click here first at 1, and then 2, click here, and then 3, and it will tell you this in the command line. So as you're going through this, read what the command line is asking you to do. So it says start here, next click here, but it's, yeah, look at the pictures of what it's trying to tell you to do, because that's going to be a lot more clear sometimes than the text that shows up. So you click enter for all of these things. Select something, enter, and play around with it so you see how it works. And that's the point of this scribble page, is to just walk through each of these drawing tools and try it out. You really can't understand how it works until you play with it, try it out. So before you're trying to, get some specific radius or some specific diameter. So you can draw these things by just clicking on the screen, or you can actually type numbers in. But play around with all the different ways to do this. So you can draw a circle with a radius, a diameter, 2 point. This is kind of fun. If you want a circle to go between two, and this could be really tricky without that little tool, to make sure the circle is going to go between 2 points, whether it's a radius or a diameter, or maybe you want tangent to two surfaces. So let's see. Let's go ahead and make a rectangle just so we have a couple of surfaces to be tangent to. So I'm going to go ahead, and it says do the first line to be tangent to, now the second tangent. And then in here, I'm going to have something with at least a 14 radius. I'll say 15, and you can see that circle is bumped up to both of those sides. If I have 3 sides I want that circle bumped up against, I can go ahead, specify side 1, enter, side 2, enter, side 3, enter, and then the circle is going to bump up against all 3 of those sides. Very handy little tool. Rectangles. It's going to go from one corner to kind of the opposite corner, and you can pull it up or down or sideways. So one way or the other, you're going kind of in a diagonal across that. Polygons. This is any number of sides. So first it's going to ask you the number of sides. So I can have 5 sides and then tell it, is it going to draw it inside or outside of a circle? So kind of what you were doing in some of those sketching exercises. So play around with this, change the number of sides. You can have odd sides, even sides. put it in a circle, outside of a circle, and just define that diameter. So polygons, here's an ellipse. So center, and then the long side, and then the short side. So here we go, specify the center, and the long side, and the short side. So click, click, click. Here is another way to define an ellipse. So from one side all the way to the end, and then to say we're going to have the kind of the width of it. Here's if I just want part of an ellipse. Lots of clicks in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to say click once, click twice. Here's how thick it is, and then we're telling it how much of that ellipse we want. So it doesn't go all the way around. Hatching. This is kind of fun. There's a lot of different hatching patterns, and some of these, as soon as you click on a tool, it'll pull up an entire new menu of tools up at the top. And just click around in it, play with it. You can have all kinds of different customizations in here. As soon as you're done, you can just click on the done arrow. Here's a gradient. You can come up here and change your colors around and read what is in the command line. So whatever you want filled in, you click somewhere inside of that shape. If I want to maybe change the orientation of which way that gradient is going. So again, just play around with this. The more time you spend playing with this stuff, the better you'll get. Okay, on to modify. So let's say we have something, we want to move it. The table was here, and now we want to move it over here or something. Okay, first select object, enter, move, base point. So I grab the center of it, and now I can move the thing. And that's how all of these are going to go. So copy. First, I'm going to want to select the object. So click on it, enter, and now I have to pick it up at some point. So I'll grab the base point and click, 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 and now I've got a whole bunch of copies. Stretch. This is really a tricky one. It depends on how you select it, and that picture isn't quite good. Okay, so if I go from right to left, that leftmost line, that is where it's going to stretch it from. So you have to select it from right to the left, like you're drawing a box, and then stretch it out. Okay, rotate. Select your objects. You can select more than one object at once. So let's say I want to rotate all of these together. Then the base point to rotate it around. So there we go. We're rotating something. Let's see. What else do we have? Mirror. If you have something that's symmetrical, just draw half of it. Draw half of it, and then use that mirror tool to copy it around to the other side. Okay, so let's go ahead. If you select from right to left versus left to right, those are different selection tools. One of them selects everything, and the other one selects just what it touches. So play around with selecting things in different ways. Scale. So let's say this was supposed to be centimeters and I had it as inches or something. So I'm going to have to change the size of everything. So here you go. You can make the size of this thing double. Trim. You will use trim over and over and over again. And this one, it will trim a line that has kind of two intersections on either side of it. So you have to grab little pieces that have two spots where it's intersected, and then you just click on it and that little piece of line is gone. Fillet and edge. There's chamfer and fillet. Fillet is a curved circle. Make sure the radius is something large enough that you can see. Like right now, this box is huge. So even though I did a fillet, it's such a small radius, you can't see it. So I'm going to have to redo this with a larger radius, and then you'll be able to actually see what happened. That's one of the common mistakes made with fillet, is not filling in the correct radius on that thing. Rectangular arrays, polar arrays. So if you have something like, I don't know, seats in a classroom, or you have a repeating, this one pulls up a whole new menu. So you tell it how many columns, how many rows, what's the spacing between the columns and the rows. And again, just spend some time in each of these menus, play around with it until you get the feel of how that tool works. So there's a rectangle array. There's also a path array. This one needs an object and a path. So let's go ahead and we'll just draw an object, just a random circle, and then we have to give it some kind of a path to follow. So we'll use a polyline because all of those line segments are kind of connected to one another, and we'll give it some kind of an interesting path to follow over here. Okay, so we have an object, we have a path, and now we can do the path array. So I'm going to click on the object, enter, click on the path, and there we go. And just like the other ones, you can actually add multiple rows to this. You can specify the spacing between everything. So that can be a very handy thing too. Let's see, one more array left, and that is the polar array. So this is something that's going to go around in a circle. So let's go ahead and make something for this. Okay, so how about a flower petal? So we can see if we remember how to make an arc here. Maybe we want to make it symmetrical, so there's a mirror command. And we're going to take those two objects and have a polar array for those flower petals. We can make it extra fancy by putting extra rows on there. Okay, so polar array, rectangular array, path array. Here is one more. This is the offset command. So you can take something that has been joined together, J-O-I-N, will join line segments together, or explode if you want to tear them apart. This is really nice for making walls. You can pull it out, you can pull it in. You have to set the distance between one line to another. So you can make really teeny offsets, but think of hallways, and there's a lot of times where you have two sides to something where you have them kind of follow one another. So very, very nice command there, offset. I have some notes for you if I was going a little bit fast for you. So this has like the different types of line, X line, array, P line, to go through circle, rectangle, polygon. So it just has a couple of screenshots. So here's the modify tools, move something around, rotate, explode, break something into individual line segments, join things together, mirror command. Walk through these notes and make sure you can try out some of these, like extend. This one is actually not in the ribbon by default. You have to actually just type it into the command line. But it is another very, very useful tool. You can take a bunch of lines and shoot them out so that they're all extending to the same distance. Trim, very useful modify tool. And just go through this thing and try out all these modify, arrays, offset, scale, type some text in there, multi-lines of text. And at the end of it, I want you to make some kind of a scribble page. So pick a pattern, try out those arrays, play around with the different hatch styles, and just have fun with it, make something neat. And by the end of it, hopefully you'll be familiar with everything in the draw and everything in the modify. So you can do this as kind of an array, or there's another set of notes that kind of goes through introduction to AutoCAD, competitions, links to other tutorials that are online, file types. The end of this guy has coordinates, and this is like out of AutoCAD's for Dummies. It was a fun little book. If you want a textbook, AutoCAD for Dummies is a good one. If you take that bike, that's another way to do a scribble page. So you can play around with trim commands and offset commands, hatching. You can make the spokes with a polar array. Just play around with it, add some color. And this could be your scribble page to make like a really cool bicycle or motorcycle or something. So anyways, play around with all of those tools until you're comfortable. Draw and modify. Hope that'll get you through the first chunk.